the blood between them. I raised two sons I thought loved each other. I never imagined one would destroy the other's family. I always thought my job as a mother was to build bridges, set the table, open my door, keep the kettle warm, and speak softly when voices rose too quickly. But bridges crack where you can't see, and love, no matter how faithfully it is cooked and folded and set out like fresh linens, does not always hold. I have two sons, Michael and David. Michael came first, all promising shoulders and grins that won strangers inside of a hello. If he wanted something, he charmed it to his side and made it grateful for being chosen. He was born with a flag in his hand and a crowd already clapping. David arrived with a different kind of light. He was quiet without being shy. A listener first, a teller only when asked. He brought me dandelions like they were precious artifacts. Asked questions that made me pause, with a dish in one hand and a towel in the other. He had his father's soft steadiness, his grandfather's patience. I placed them in my head like bookends. Michael's laughter on the left, David's silence on the right, holding up everything between them. They were brothers the way I prayed they would be, each a mirror and a foil. In childhood photos, Michael always a step ahead, David close behind, his palm hovering near an elbow as if prepared to catch him. I thought that meant they would be okay. I thought that meant they'd never fall. I've learned that sometimes the hands closest to us are the ones we cannot feel until they're gone. Thanksgiving tasted different that year, and I knew it before I even lifted the lid on the sweet potatoes. The house felt too full and too hollow at once, like a song played on a cracked speaker. The grandchildren were chasing each other down the hallway with ribbon wands, and the dog was stuttering barks at a cartoon turkey on the TV, and still the air had weight. I set the long table with the good dishes, the ones my mother saved for Christmas and never let us touch when we were little. I smoothed the linen runner as if a wrinkle could cause a storm. Outside, the maple in the front yard had offered up every last piece of its heart. Rust and flame and gold lay scattered like proof that even holding on can look beautiful when it's finally over. They arrived in shifts. Michael first, swagger folded into the same coat he wore when he landed his first promotion. He hugged me tight enough to carry the scent of cedar into the kitchen. "Ma," he said into my hair, and the kettle inside me rattled with hope. Behind him, his wife Lauren, unshaken lipstick, precise warmth, a kind laugh with its edges pinned. Then David, holding flowers 2 days past perfect, as if he'd plucked them from the edge of a memory rather than a florist's bucket. He kissed my cheek. "Traffic," he said, because he has always apologized for things a person can't control. Emily came beside him. Emily, cheeks that blush easy, eyes that smile even when her mouth is tired. She set a pie on the counter and went to wash her hands, as if she might scrub off the complicated. When we finally sat, I led Grace the way my mother did. A short prayer, a longer breath. "Before we carve," I said, because my throat knew before my mind did, "does anyone want to share something they're grateful for?" Silence can be a throne or a trial. That night, it was both. "Family," Lauren said automatically, and I watched Michael's jaw shift like a wave about to break. He wasn't looking at Lauren. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Emily. Emily's hand trembled where it rested on her napkin. Not enough for the children to notice, more than enough for me. "Are you feeling okay, honey?" I asked. Simple, ordinary words. And then, the grenade. "She's pregnant," David blurted. It fell out of his mouth like an apology. The grandchildren squealed. Lauren clapped. I did what mothers have always done. I reached for the nearest joy and tried to anchor us with it. "Oh, sweetheart," I said to Emily, "that's wonderful." A fork crashed against the hardwood. "Michael's!" He stared at the floor, colors rising and falling underneath his skin like a fevered tide. When he finally looked up, that tiny flicker, there and gone, spelled a truth I couldn't translate into anything but panic. I've seen my son's faces after broken arms and ugly report cards, and the night the police called about the fence on Maple Street. I've seen awe in them, and fury, and adolescent boredom, and grown man pride. I had never seen that. We ate, we laughed at the safe stories. We passed bowls of food like they were torches we didn't want to carry for too long. Emily ducked my gaze. David cut the turkey too thick. Michael kept forgetting where to put his hands. When the pie plates were scraped and the coffee turned cold on our tongues, everyone stood up at once, just to escape the chairs. "Congratulations again," Michael said to Emily at the door, in a voice that didn't belong in our family. She nodded without words. Her eyes were glass lakes in winter. I kissed my grandchildren hard, sending them home with leftovers and vague assurances that the world was fixed to the ground. When the house was quiet enough to hear it breathe, I pressed my palm to the place in the table where the fork had hit and felt the faintest crack. Wood remembers. So, do mothers. The weeks wandered past, dazed and swift. My phone buzzed in ways I didn't recognize. Gaps where there were usually goodnight photos, texts that arrived at angles, conversations that bowed under their own weight. Emily stopped joining our Sunday video calls. When she did, she held the camera high and far, as if distance could cure closeness. "First trimester fatigue," David explained, his smile thin at the edges. "She'll be back on next week." The following Sunday, he put us on speaker and kept his voice bright enough to make mine ache. Michael, who had a loyalty tax on every kindness, stopped dropping by. "Just to check your gutters, Ma." Lauren came alone once with a steaming casserole and left quickly because she'd forgotten a thing in the oven. I stood by the kitchen window afterward and watched the trees throw their late leaves into the street, like confetti, too soggy to celebrate. I spent my mornings tidying rooms that weren't dirty, and my afternoons baking for people who already had bread. Every small thing that had always been a comfort began to itch. I wiped the same corner of the counter 3 times because I couldn't tidy what needed cleaning. When something is wrong, houses whisper. A neighbor saw Michael's car outside the clinic on a Tuesday morning and mentioned it in that way neighbors do, like an accident of language. "Saw your boy down by Pine," she said. "Everything okay?" I said yes with the speed of a stone skipping. I caught Emily at the market, standing in front of the citrus, like she'd forgotten why she was there. I almost said something light, something that could float above us both. Instead, I asked, "Can I help you carry anything?" She blinked, like someone waking up. Then she cried, right there, between the oranges and the pre-washed salad. We took the long road home, through the park, under arched bridge where kids think their voices are songs. And when we sat at my kitchen table, Emily folded and unfolded the napkin, until it was soft as a wish. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said. "If you have carried children in your arms and then watched them become adults who make choices you cannot hold, you know the sound of air leaving a room." I swallowed it. "Tell me the truth," I said, "because love that won't look at the truth isn't love." She nodded, eyes down. "It was after the 4th," she said. "We were cleaning up at your house. Michael stayed to stack chairs in the garage. I went out to grab the extra coolers. He said something that made me laugh, and I hadn't laughed like that in months. It was small. It was—" She shook her head, like she could pour out the memory. "It should have stayed small." I saw it then, frame by frame, fireworks turning our cul-de-sac into a galaxy. Michael carrying 2 chairs in each hand as if nothing was heavy. Emily reaching for a laugh like it might be the one thing that kept the world from slipping. How many times? The question tasted like ash. "Twice," she whispered. And then I told him no. Then I told myself it was a storm that had blown past, something only the dark saw. "And the baby?" I asked, though my body already knew the answer. "There are some equations you can't refuse to do." "I thought it was David's," she said, words brittle with hope. "The timing, it could have been. I swear, it could have been. I wanted it to be. But when I saw Michael at Thanksgiving, the way he looked at me—" She wrung the napkin. "I think he knows." I closed my eyes and saw my sons at 5 and 3, racing in the backyard with pillowcases tied around their necks, convinced they were invincible. It is a dangerous thing to believe you will never fall. "Does David suspect anything?" I asked, because we follow the next right question, even when our hearts want to run. She shook her head, then stopped and nodded once. "He keeps asking if I'm happy. He keeps saying, 'This is good, right? We're okay, right?' And I want to scream, because what if I tell him and I break the last unbroken thing in him?" I reached across the table for her hands. They were cold, mottled with fear. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "the last unbroken thing in him is the truth." Her tears fell hard and fast, and I let them find my knuckles. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I never meant—" Her voice fractured. "I know," I said, "but we are staring at a fire now. What we do next determines what it burns." The kettle, faithful keeper of my home's heart, began to sing. I made tea because that's what you do when there are no good places to rest. We drank it in a silence that hummed with everything we couldn't yet say. When she left, I slid my palm across the table's faint crack and felt it widen. Fear is an efficient carpenter. I called Michael. He didn't answer. I called again. "Ma," he said when he finally picked up. His voice was sanded down like a door dragging against a swollen frame. "Come by," I said. Not a request, a direction. "Now." He arrived with that old swagger, trying to sit back down inside him like a guest who didn't know they'd worn out their welcome. He leaned against the counter, the same boy who used to steal olives from the cutting board before company came. "What's up?" he said, casual, like gasoline in a glass. "I'm not going to ask you to swear," I told him, "because I have been a mother long enough to know what swearing does to truth. I'm going to tell you what I know. And you're going to tell me if I should be proud of the man I raised, or if I need to sit down so I don't fall." He looked at the floor, the ceiling, the apple bowl, anywhere but me. Michael, I said softly. His mouth trembled. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. But something inside his eyes opened and said yes. I had thought that when betrayal arrives, it would arrive with thunder. It does not. It is quieter than a clock. What did you think would happen? I asked, too tired to perform what ifs. Did you think love doesn't keep receipts? Did you think blood licenses us to take without paying? He shut his eyes. I didn't think, he said. And I believed him. I didn't think. She was alone in a way I recognized. David was working that week nonstop. She needed to laugh. I needed to believe I still could. It was stupid. It was like being 13 again and thinking the ocean won't knock you over if you stand tall enough. And the baby? I asked. He swallowed. I don't know, he whispered. A beat. I'm terrified, I do. Then you tell your brother the truth before the truth finds him alone, I said, because lies are hunters. They prefer to catch people in the dark. He nodded and looked so young I wanted to build a fort out of blankets and hide us all inside, the way we used to on rainy days. But the rain was inside now. We would drown if we hid. Ma, he said, a rip of sound. I'm sorry. Be sorry to him, I said, and be brave. This is the only way left to be the man you were supposed to be. When something breaks in a house, you hear it twice. Once, when it shatters, and again, every time you pass the place where it shattered. And remember, truth breaks the same way. David came to me 2 nights later with a bouquet he'd picked himself from a roadside stand, a stubborn habit of his, as if choosing imperfect flowers could keep the world from becoming too polished to love. Is there coffee? He asked, and then he placed the flowers in the same sink where his father used to wash paintbrushes. He stared at the running water like it might deliver a message. Sit, I said. And the word felt like a rope I wanted to tie around his waist before the current got him. He took one look at my face and exhaled a laugh that was not a laugh. So it's bad, he said. You already made the sit face. I've heard people talk about how time slows in emergencies. I have not found that to be true. Time speeds up and turns the floor to ice. Michael is coming over, I told him. Emily's on her way too. Okay, he said, nodding like someone bracing for a vaccine. Okay. He stood to pace. Saturday. Stood again. You know, when you're a kid, he said after a moment, and you think adults will warn you before they hurt you? This is going to sting, they say. 3, 2, 1. I wish life would count to 3 before it kicks. When they arrived, I put them at my table like witnesses, took their phones the way security does weapons, and turned the kettle on because I did not know what else to do with my hands. Don't soften it, I told Michael quietly as I handed him a mug he did not drink from. He is brave enough to swallow the truth. Michael nodded, his cheekbones knives under thin skin. Emily's hands were folded in her lap, the napkin already ruined. David's eyes moved between them. Okay, he said again. Somebody cut it open. I'm sorry, Michael said first. 2 words that cannot and do not mend. For what? David asked, and his voice picked up its old steadiness, like a violin tuning on a winter night. Michael tried to speak and failed. Emily stepped into the silence. "I made a mistake," she said. "I made a choice." Twice she looked up, eyes red and sure. With Michael. The world did not end. It did not even shake the chandelier. The clock kept time with a certain cruelty. The kettle clicked off. I watched something pass over David's face, shock and then anger. And then, the most frightening thing of all, nothing. He did not stand. He did not slam a hand. He did not spit rage across my kitchen. He looked at me, and for a moment he was 10 years old again, asking if the bee sting would hurt if he didn't look. "How long?" he asked gently. "Since July," Emily whispered. "It happened in July. Once in July, once in August." I told him no. After. I told myself it was a sickness that would pass if I didn't feed it. "And the baby?" His voice hardly moved the air. "We don't know," Emily said, and I wanted to fold the whole house around them both. "We need to know." "We should have known before today. She pressed her fist to her mouth. David nodded. It was not forgiveness. It was cataloging. He nodded again, as if sorting the facts from the wreckage might keep him upright. He turned to Michael, and there I finally saw the older brother meet the younger one as a man. "You always have to win," David said, calm and scalpel clean. "Even when there's nothing to win. Even when winning means burning Mom's table." Michael flinched. "I'm sorry," he said again, as if he had only 2 coins left in his pocket and kept offering them like they were enough. "I know," David said. "The men in our family are very, very sorry people." I felt the past move through the room then, the men who had taught my sons without meaning to, the accidents of silence and pride, the afternoons when I put a bandage on the wrong wound because I mistook noise for pain. I wanted to confess every mistake I had made, every moment I had praised charisma over character, every time I'd said, "Go to your brother. He knows what to do," instead of "Be your own man." But this was not my confessional. This was their cliff. "What now?" Michael asked the table, because looking at his brother felt like eating stones. David breathed out, and it sounded like a whistle in an empty stadium. "Now," he said, standing up with extraordinary gentleness, "I take what is left of me and leave." He took his coat from the back of the chair. "I'll be in touch about the test." He kissed my forehead. "I love you, Mom," he said, and I felt the rope around his waist loosen, and I did not know how to tighten it without strangling us both. He turned at the door. "You were always good at the party, Mike," he said to his brother. "I hope the party keeps you warm." Then he was gone. Michael pressed his palms to his eyes like he could push himself back into another year. Emily folded forward, soundless, and when I put my hand on her back, I couldn't tell whose breath I was trying to steady. The test did what tests do: slice the hope into measurable pieces. Science is not kind. It is only precise. We got the call on a Thursday morning that should have belonged to grocery lists and laundry, percentages and certainty, math that did not care about dandelion bouquets or fireworks. The baby was Michael's. I told them separately. I made soup for both households, because when you are drowning in truth, your hands must still do something. David listened and said thank you. as if I had given him directions to a place he never wanted to go. Then he put his head in his hands, and we stayed like that for a very long time. Two people holding up the roof with our silence. I won't punish a child for the sea he was born in, he said finally. I won't be cruel about visits. I won't take my hurt to the hospital. He moved out of the house he'd saved for and into an apartment with a rattling heater and a balcony that caught morning light. He left the nursery unpainted. He bought a plant and kept it alive. He came by each Sunday at noon and stood in my kitchen like a kind ghost and did not cry. And then he went home, and I cried enough for both of us. Michael left town with Lauren, who had not asked for this storm and yet stood inside it with a stiff spine and a mouth set against the wind. They moved 2 hours south to a rental with beige walls. He sent me a picture of a sunrise over a cheap fence with the caption, "Starting fresh," as if the sun has ever been a broom. Emily carried the baby alone while the world recalibrated itself around her. I went with her to appointments when she could not breathe, and to the store when she forgot what things cost. She wore guilt like a coat too heavy to hang. I told her to drink water and sleep when she could, and forgive herself only at the speed the baby forgave the world each morning. When the baby came, a boy with a furious cry and a birthmark behind his right ear, I held him and felt the awful, holy wave of love that does not ask for a less complicated body to land in. He looked like both of my sons and like no one at all. He looked like the future refusing to apologize for arriving. We named him Eli, the room agreed. David came that night, quiet as a whisper, and stood in the doorway. "May I?" he asked. Emily nodded hard, the sort of nod you give when you are safe and will never be safe again. David cradled the baby with hands I had watched, learn how to fasten buttons and steer bicycles and hail cabs. He sang under his breath, the song my mother used to sing when thunderstorms sat on the roof. When Eli squirmed, David smiled. It tore something in me so cleanly, I almost admired it. "I won't be his father," David said to the air, "but I will be his harbor when the wind is wrong." I nodded. The rope around my waist found a knot. Michael did not come to the hospital. He sent a basket of white lilies that smelled like a funeral and a text that said, "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell him I'll be there when I've made this right. You cannot make right a bridge you burned behind you. You can only build a different one and hope enough people cross." Months passed. Seasons tried their best at distraction. Holidays were divided like assets. Invitations were folded carefully like letters never sent. I roasted smaller turkeys and learned what recipes can be halved. I put extra chairs in the garage. I kept a box of baby toys tucked under my table and brought it out when Emily came over. I learned the names of every disappointment like they were relatives. The people in my neighborhood stopped asking the kind questions and started leaving the kind casseroles. I gained 10 pounds and lost patience with small talk. I found myself smiling at strangers' babies in the cereal aisle and crying when I passed high school soccer fields. Memory is a crowded house. You never know which room you'll open. The first time Michael met Eli, the boy was 3 months old and wore a blue hat that made him look like a lighthouse. Michael stood in my living room with his hands jammed too deep in his pockets, shoulders squared against the ghost of his own reflection. Emily held the baby on the couch and did not try to make the room friendly. She didn't owe the room anything. "Hey, little man," Michael said cautiously, as if voice itself were an animal that might bite. When Eli turned his head toward the sound, something feral and fragile flared in Michael's face. He did not reach to hold him. He sat on the edge of the coffee table and whispered nonsense syllables, testing how vowels feel when they are allowed to be soft. Emily watched, 1,000 storms crossing her eyes, and none of them raining. After, Michael stood up and told the rug he was sorry again. Emily nodded once. "Do better next," she said, like a judge with mercy and a mother without indulgence. For him, not for me. I wanted to hug them both and to thump both of them with a rolled-up newspaper. I made tea. The kettle earned its keep. People say time heals, as if time were a nurse who makes house calls with a bag of sutures. Time does not heal. Time stretches so that the ache has room to change shape. You heal if you're lucky enough to find the kind of love that makes healing possible. When I look at pictures now, Michael with a missing tooth, David with a scraped knee, both wearing capes made out of old towels, I want to go back and whisper to that woman, putting bandages on elbows, that she should also look at their hearts, praise the kindness as loudly as the achievements. Note the way one boy says sorry when he has not done anything wrong, and ask why he feels responsible for other people's weather. Note the way the other boy glows under applause, and teach him that the quiet work of love deserves ovations too. But you cannot mother backward. You can only mother forward, even when your children are taller than your sorrow. Eli is 2 now. He loves the wheels of trucks and the buttons of elevators and the stray cats that refuse to be charmed. He has Michael's quick grin and David's way of listening, as if your words are stones that must be arranged carefully to make a path. He has Emily's stubbornness, which might save him if he keeps it. He likes my kitchen best when the oven is on. We are building something new out of what we burned. It is uglier than the old thing and stronger in places I wouldn't have guessed. Emily brings Eli on Wednesdays and Sundays. I keep a pack-and-play set up in the guest room and a bag of Cheerios in my purse. David comes every Sunday at noon. He and Emily have learned a language of civility that is not translation for forgiveness, but passes for it when Eli is on the floor with blocks. Michael sees his son on Saturdays at the park 2 towns over. Sometimes they come here after baseball in the spring. Lauren, who could have left but did not, sits on my back steps and drinks lemonade like Grace. She speaks to Eli with the gentleness of someone who knows every chorus of this song and chooses harmony. People ask me if I've forgiven. I don't know. Forgiveness is not a switch. It is more like sanding a rough piece of wood. Slow, repetitive, hard on the hands. Some days I run my palm across the grain and the splinters are fewer. Other days I pull back with blood. What I have decided is this: blood is not the point. I used to think it was. Blood wrote their names beside each other, made their baby teeth look like the same scattered pearls, put their birthdays in the same month. But blood alone is just chemistry. Love is the point. And love is not a feeling. Love is a series of small decisions made when the feelings have every excuse to leave the room. I loved my sons the day they were born, and I loved them the day one wrecked the other. That second love was the harder work. It required me to build boundaries where I had only hung wind chimes. It required me to choose the truth, even when it meant sitting with them both, while the truth burned holes in the air. I still set my table with the good plates. It is an act of defiance and faith. Some Thursdays are just Thursdays again. Some are battlefields with better lighting. On those nights, I serve dessert first. On those nights, Eli crawls into David's lap with the uncomplicated trust of a child who believes that adults have learned their lessons. David reads him the same book twice, and a third time without sighing. When Michael knocks, he waits for me to open the door. And when he walks in, he puts his phone in the bowl by the keys without me asking. We are not healed. We are healing. We are not whole. We are building. In the evening, when everyone is gone, I sit at my kitchen table and press my fingers into the faint crack where the fork hit the floor that Thanksgiving. It is still there, if you know where to look. It always will be. But we eat here anyway. We pass bowls across it. We set books down on it. We draw with crayons over it when the boy gets restless. The crack is not the point. The table is. When I tell you that I raised two sons I thought loved each other, I am not lying. They did. They do. Love is not a wall that keeps you from falling. Love is the hand that helps you decide what to do after you've hit the ground. If you came to my door tonight and asked for advice, I'd put the kettle on and give you the only thing I know. Teach your children early that there is more than one way to be strong. Show them how to apologize before they are asked. Show them how to stop before the cliff. Show them that "I didn't mean to" is not medicine, that wanting does not equal deserving, that laughter is not a promise. And if it all still burns, because sometimes it will, sit with them in the ashes until the first green shows. Make soup, hold the baby, keep a chair empty for the next brave truth. I used to think family was about blood. I still do, just not the way I once did. Blood flows, it stains, it carries things we cannot see. But it is love, the kind that tells the truth, the kind that sets the table again, the kind that chooses to return, that keeps a house standing when the bridge gives way. Tired of chaos at home? Unlock simple, practical parenting tips to create a calm and loving vibe. Since 2010, Parenting Simply has been your community for connecting with your kids and mastering easy skills to transform your home. Our mission: slash stress for parents and kids with powerful communication and organizational hacks. Say goodbye to doom and gloom. Parenting can be fun, joyful, and fulfilling. You've got what it takes to be an amazing, loving parent, and we'll show you how. Click the link below for stress-free parenting tools and join our community. Dive into stories that stir your soul. Jackie Smith. Stories is your daily haven for raw emotions, courageous women, and authentic true life narratives. We weave tales of hope, strength, dreams, and the quiet miracles of everyday life. Subscribe now to experience a fresh, heartfelt chapter every day that sparks wonder and connection. Join our community and be part of the journey.